The Bates family was known to everyone around them as a symbol of unity. Gil Bates carried the image of a strong, protective father, while Kelly Jo was the nurturing center who held all the children together. To the outside world, their marriage looked unshakable, a perfect blend of faith, discipline, and endless patience. But behind closed doors, something else was quietly happening, something none of their children could truly understand at first. Kelly had spent most of her life giving until she had little left for herself. She had poured her strength into raising 19 children, holding the house together, listening to endless needs, and never asking for much in return. For years, she convinced herself that the exhaustion was just a normal part of life. But slowly, she began to feel an emptiness creeping into her days. Gill was still there, but he wasn't really there. He spent more time on commitments outside the home, speaking, traveling, working. His words to her grew fewer, his touch less frequent. His laughter with her almost gone. First, she ignored it. A wife should not complain. That's what she told herself. She carried the silence inside her, smiled for the children, cooked the meals, listened to the endless noise of a big household. But at night, when the house grew quiet, she would sit awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he still noticed her the way he once did. Gill, on the other hand, told himself everything was fine. He believed providing, guiding, and staying busy was enough. He didn't see the shadows in Kelly S eyes, the way her hand sometimes trembled when she reached for a cup of tea, or the faint sigh that escaped her lips when no one else was listening. He thought love was steady and unchanging, but he forgot that even steady things needed to be watered and cared for. The cracks began small. A missed conversation here, an ignored question there. Kelly would ask about his day, and Gill would answer in short words, his eyes already on the next task. She began to feel invisible. At the dinner table, surrounded by the children S chatter, she often felt alone. Surrounded by so many people, she felt unseen by the one who mattered most. One night, after the children had gone to bed, she tried to speak. Gill, do you think we re still the same? Her voice was soft but heavy. Gill looked at her with surprise, as though the question itself was unnecessary. Of course we are. Nothing S changed, but something had changed. Kelly felt it like a wound that refused to close. His reassurance sounded hollow, like words spoken out of habit rather than truth. She wanted to believe him, yet her heart told her otherwise. The next weeks turned heavier. Kelly found herself crying in the kitchen late at night, wiping her tears quickly whenever footsteps approached. She wrote in her journal, pages filled with words she couldn't speak out loud. Words like loneliness, silence, forgotten. She prayed every night, asking God to give her strength. But deep inside, she wondered if even prayer could fill the emptiness she felt. The children began to notice. Erin, sensitive and intuitive, asked her one day, Mom, are you okay? You seem tired, Kelly forced a smile and kissed her daughter S forehead. I am fine, sweetheart. Just a little busy, But the truth was pressing harder each day. Gill noticed the distance but didn't know how to bridge it. His life had become a rhythm of obligations, appearances, responsibilities. He believed his wife was strong enough to carry her part, just as she always had. He didn't T realized that the strongest hearts sometimes break in silence. One evening, when the house was unusually still, Kelly finally said words she had been holding inside for months. I feel like you don't see me anymore. The words landed like stones between them. Gill froze. For a moment he had no answer. His silence only deepened the ache in her chest. Tears welled in Kelly S eyes. You used to look at me, Gill. You used to talk to me. Now it feels like I am just here. A part of the house, not a part of you. And, rid quo. Gill shifted uncomfortably. He was an undersquo. T used to this kind of conversation. And quo. Kelly, you know I love you. I undersquo ve. Just been busy. You understand how much responsibility we have. And rid quo. But responsibility was not the same as intimacy. She wanted him. Not his duties, not his obligations, but the man who once held her hand like she was his whole world. That night, Kelly slept facing the wall, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Gill lay beside her, staring into the dark, feeling something heavy pressing against his chest. For the first time, he wondered if the life they had built might not be enough to hold them together. Days turned into weeks, and the distance grew thicker, like fog that refused to lift. Kelly undersquo. Laughter faded. The children whispered among themselves, sensing something wrong but not knowing what it was. Some nights, Kelly walked alone through the quiet hallways, touching the family photographs that lined the walls. She saw the smiling faces, the happy memories frozen in time, and wondered when those smiles had stopped belonging to her as well. And so the story of a family known for faith and unity began to shift into something darker. Not because of betrayal, not because of scandal, but because of silence. Silence that ate away at love. Silence that made even the strongest bonds fragile. Kelly stood at the edge of her own patience, unsure how much longer she could endure being unseen. Gill stood on the other side, convinced everything would be fine, blind to the storm that was already gathering inside the heart of his wife. It was only the beginning, but the beginning was enough to set everything on a path that neither of them could have imagined. The house was still full of noise, but it was no longer the same kind of noise. Children ran through the hallways, laughter filled the rooms, and life seemed as lively as ever. Yet beneath the surface, an invisible tension pressed into every corner. The smiles had begun to feel forced. The warmth that once wrapped itself around the home like a blanket now carried a chill. Gill noticed Kelly undersquo. Distance, though he didn't undersquo. T always admit it. She no longer met his eyes at the dinner table. She no longer lingered to talk with him late at night. She was polite, calm, efficient, yet her heart was elsewhere. When he returned home after long hours away, she welcomed him with quiet words, not the familiar warmth he used to take for granted. Inside, Kelly was breaking in slow motion. She carried herself with grace for the children undersquo. Sake, but the silence between her and Gill grew louder every day. She told herself not to cry, not to let the kids see, but tears found her anyway, at the sink while washing dishes, in the laundry room folding endless clothes, in the late-night hours when everyone was asleep. Her journal pages grew thicker, written in shaky handwriting. Quo. I don undersquo. T know who we are anymore. I don undersquo. T know if he even notices when I walk into a room. How long can a wife live as a shadow? Quo. The children were not blind. Carlin whispered to her sisters, quo. Mom and Dad don undersquo. T talk like before. Quo. Alyssa once asked softly, quo. Do you think they undersquo re-mad at each other? Quo. No one had the courage to speak it aloud to their parents, but they all felt the distance. Even the youngest ones noticed the lack of laughter between Mom and Dad point one evening. While Gill sat in his study surrounded by paperwork, Kelly approached. She stood quietly in the doorway, gathering courage. Her voice trembled. Quo. Gill, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Quo. He looked up confused. Quo. What do you mean? I see you every day. I know you undersquo. Refine. Quo. Her throat tightened. Quo. You don undersquo Tino. You assume. You never ask. Quo. Gill frowned defensive. Quo. Kelly, you know I undersquo am busy. You know how much pressure I carry. I can undersquo. T stopped to analyze everything every night. Quo. The words sliced her. It was an undersquo. T analysis she wanted. It was attention. It was care. It was love spoken, not assumed. That night, she wept silently after he turned away. For the first time, bitterness began to settle in her chest, a sharp bitterness she had never allowed before. Weeks turned heavier. Gill traveled more often, convinced that keeping up his responsibilities was the right thing. Kelly grew lonelier. She busied herself with the children, but even they could see her smile no longer reached her eyes. The house had become two separate worlds, one where Gill lived in duty and one where Kelly lived in silence. The turning point came one Sunday evening. They were sitting in the living room after church. The children had drifted away, and for a rare moment they were alone. Kelly broke the silence. "Andled quo. Do you ever wonder if we undersquo? We lost each other, andred quo." Her voice cracked with pain. Gill shifted uncomfortably. "Andled quo. Kelly, we undersquo. Regis going through a hard season. We undersquo. I'll get through it, andred quo." She shook her head. "Andled quo. No, Gill. This ISN undersquo. TA season. This is our life now. I feel like I don't undersquo to exist to you anymore." Andred quo. His jaw tightened. "Andled quo. That undersquo. That's not fair. I provide, I lead. I andred quo." She interrupted, her eyes glistening with tears. "Andled quo. You don't undersquo. T see me. You don't undersquo. T hear me. You stand beside me every day, and yet I undersquo. V never felt more alone." Andred quo. The silence that followed was unbearable. Gill had no answer. For the first time he realized that his wife, the woman who had carried his family with unshakable strength, was reaching the end of her endurance. From that night on, the air between them thickened. They spoke less. They slept in the same bed, but worlds apart. The children grew quieter. Sensing the shift even when no words were spoken, Kelly wrote in her journal again. "Andled quo. I prayed for us tonight. I begged God to make him see me. But maybe God is showing me something else, that love can die if it undersquo. S left alone too long. Andred quo." And so the silence turned into a storm inside her heart, a storm Gill did not see until it was too late. The house was no longer the same. Once it had been filled with warmth, a sense of unity that held 19 children together under one roof. But now, an invisible fracture ran through the walls. The children still laughed, still played, but their parents undersquo. Silence pressed down like a heavy shadow. Kelly carried herself with quiet dignity, but inside she was unraveling. Her journal pages grew darker. Words like andled quo, empty andred quo, andled quo, broken andred quo, andled quo, alone andred quo, appeared more often. Every prayer felt heavier, every night longer. She could not remember the last time Gill had truly looked into her eyes. Gill, on the other hand, felt the weight of something he couldn't undersquo to quite name. He saw the distance, but convinced himself it was an undersquo. T as serious as she made it out to be. He believed time would heal, that life would return to normal if he just kept moving forward. But he was wrong. The storm arrived on a night that seemed ordinary. Dinner had been quiet. The younger children went to bed. The older ones disappeared into their rooms. The house grew still, leaving only Gill and Kelly in the living room. Kelly undersquo. S hands trembled as she folded a blanket. Her heart pounded. She could not keep silent any longer. Andled quo. Gill andred quo. She whispered, her voice tight with emotion. "Andled quo. Do you even love me anymore? Andred quo." The question hit like thunder. Gill froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Andled quo. What kind of question is that?" "Of course I love you. Andred quo." Tears filled her eyes. "Andled quo. Then why can undersquo? T I feel it? Why can undersquo? T I see it? Love is not just words you assume I know. It undersquo. That's what you show. And you haven undersquo. T shown me in so long. Andred quo. Gill undersquo. As frustration rose. Andled quo. Kelly, I provide, I work, I give everything I have to this family. ISN undersquo. T that love. Andred quo. She shook her head, her voice breaking. Andled quo, no, Gill. That undersquo, S duty. That undersquo, S responsibility. Love is when you choose me, not just the family. Love is when you see me, not as the mother of your children, not as the one who runs the home, but as your wife. Do you even remember that I am your wife? Quo. Her words echoed painfully through the room. Gil S chest tightened. He opened his mouth to answer, but closed it again. The truth was he didn't know how to answer. Kelly S tears fell freely now. Quo. I have begged you with silence. I have begged you with my eyes. V prayed for you to see me, but you T. I feel like V died inside this marriage, and you haven to even noticed. Gil S face hardened. Quo. You re-exaggerating. V had hard times before. You re-letting emotions cloud. Quo. Her voice cracked like glass. Quo. Stop telling me I am exaggerating. This is my heart, Gil. This is my life. And I can breathe in this silence anymore. Quo. The room was heavy with words that could not be taken back. For the first time, anger sparked in Kelly S eyes, not just sadness, not just disappointment, but anger born of years of neglect. Quo. You think being busy is enough? You think being present in body is enough? It S not. I V been alone for so long, even while lying next to you. Quo. Gil finally spoke, his voice low but strained. Quo. So what are you saying, Kelly? That you want to walk away? After everything we V built? Quo. Her chest heaved. She wanted to deny it, wanted to cling to the hope of repair. But the truth pressed harder than her will. Quo. I know how much longer I can live like this. If you see me now, you never will. Quo. The silence that followed was unbearable. Gil S jaw tightened, his eyes cold with unspoken hurt. Kelly turned away, unable to look at him. That night, they lay in the same bed, but oceans apart. Kelly cried into the pillow. Gil stared at the ceiling, his hands clenched into fists. The gulf between them had never been wider. Over the next days, the fights became sharper. Small disagreements turned into arguments. The children heard raised voices through the walls. Carlin cried in her room. Lawson sat quietly, clenching his fists, wishing he could fix what was breaking. Even the little one sensed the storm point one evening. Kelly S voice carried down the hallway, sharp with pain. Quo. I can T keep begging you to notice me, Gil. I am tired of being invisible. Quo. Gil S response was hard, defensive. Quo. And I am tired of being told I am not enough after everything I V given. Maybe you LL never be satisfied. Quo. The words cut her deeper than a knife. She sank into a chair, her sobs shaking her body. For the first time, the children saw their mother cry openly, unable to hide it was the breaking point. The moment when both realized their love, once so strong, was no longer holding. Kelly wrote in her journal that night. Quo. I think this is the end. I love him, but I cannot survive unseen. I cannot survive unloved. Quo. Gil sat alone in his study, staring at the walls lined with family photos. He saw smiles frozen in time, moments of joy that seemed like a different lifetime. For the first time, he felt fear, not of losing his responsibilities, but of losing the woman who had carried his life beside him for decades. The storm had broken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence in the house had become unbearable. Every room felt colder, every hallway heavier. The children no longer asked why their parents spoke so little. They already knew the answer, even if no one dared say it. Kelly had reached the end of her strength. Her heart ached constantly, as if every breath carried the weight of years unsaid. She had prayed, cried, pleaded, but the answers never came. And Gill, though burdened with his own guilt and confusion, seemed unwilling to change in the ways she desperately needed. One afternoon, as the younger children played outside and the older ones busied themselves in their rooms, Kelly sat across from Gill at the kitchen table. The air between them was heavy, suffocating. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "And'ld quo, Gill. I can squo, to do this any more." "And'ld quo," his eyes snapped to hers, sharp and disbelieving. "And'ld quo, what do you mean, And'ld quo?" Her voice shook, but her words were steady. "And'ld quo, I can squo. T stay in a marriage where I feel invisible. I squo. V begged you for years to see me, to hear me, to love me as your wife. But you don squo T. And I can squo T keep living this way. I want a divorce, And'd quo." The word divorce landed like a bomb. Gill squo. S face went pale, his breath caught. "And'd quo. Kelly, you can squo. T mean that? After everything we squo V built? After our family? Our faith, And'd quo." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "And'd quo, I do mean it. Because our family already feels broken, Gill. You just don squo. T wanna see it. I squo. We've been holding this together alone for too long. And I squo am breaking, and rud quo." Gill slammed his hand on the table, his voice cracking. "And'd quo. So you squo, re just giving up? After decades together, after raising 19 kids, after everything? You squo, re just throwing it all away." "And'd quo," her sobs grew heavier. "And'd quo, no, Gill. I squo, am not throwing it away. It was already lost. I just don squo. T have the strength to pretend any more. And rud quo." The words pierced him deeper than any wound he had ever known. For the first time, he felt powerless. All the responsibilities, all the control, all the leadership. None of it could save his marriage. The following weeks blurred into painful steps neither of them wanted to take, yet both knew were inevitable. Papers were drawn. Meetings with lawyers whispered about in hushed voices. The children watched with wide, broken eyes. Some cried openly. Others hid their pain in silence. Lawson tried to reason with his parents. "And'd quo. Please don squo. T do this. We can fix it. You squo. V always taught us family comes first. How can family come first if you split it apart? And'd quo." Kelly pulled him close, her tears soaking his shoulder. "And'd quo. I squo. V tried, sweetheart. I squo. V tried for so long. But sometimes love isn squo. T enough when one heart is unseen. And'd quo." Gill stood stiffly in the corner, silent, his eyes red but dry. He wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but deep inside he knew her words were true. The younger children struggled to understand. Little Jedson asked one night, "And'd quo. Does this mean Daddy won squo to live here anymore? And'd quo." The question shattered Kelly squo's heart. She kissed his forehead, whispering, "And'd quo. Daddy will always love you. We both will. That will never change. And'd quo." But even as she spoke, she knew their world would never be the same. The day they signed the divorce papers, the air felt heavy with finality. Kelly squo. S hands trembled as she put her signature on the line. Tears blurred her vision. Gill signed in silence, his jaw clenched, his heart breaking, but his pride refusing to show it. When it was over, they sat in the lawyer squo's office, side by side but miles apart. No words were spoken. There was nothing left to say. Back at home, the family gathered, unsure how to exist in this new reality. The older children comforted the younger ones. Some were angry, some heartbroken, some silent. Kelly moved into the guest room first, then eventually into a small house nearby. The once united home now felt divided, its foundation cracked beyond repair. Gill sat alone in the study late one night, staring at the family portraits on the wall. He reached out, touching the glass where Kelly _ S face smiled back at him from a photograph taken years ago. His eyes finally filled with tears and I didn't _ T think it would end like this, he whispered to the empty room. And for the first time he realized that love, once neglected, could truly die. The Bates family, once admired for its unity and strength, now stood fractured. A marriage that had weathered decades, children, and faith had fallen, not from scandal or betrayal, but from silence too long ignored. The papers had been signed. The marriage that once stood as a symbol of faith and endurance was now only history. The Bates family, once praised for unity, was learning to live with cracks that could not be sealed. Kelly moved into a small, quiet home not far from the main house. It was modest, nothing compared to the loud, bustling life she had always known. For the first time in decades, her evenings were filled with silence, no constant chatter, no endless footsteps, no Gill walking through the door. She sat on her couch, looking at family pictures lined on a shelf, and felt the weight of what had been lost. Yet beneath the grief, there was also a strange sense of relief. For the first time, she was no longer fighting to be seen by someone who refused to look. Her nights were heavy with loneliness, but her mornings slowly began to feel different. She prayed, but her prayers were no longer desperate cries for her marriage to heal. They were prayers for strength, for her children, for peace inside her broken heart. She wrote in her journal, I am alone now, but maybe, just maybe, I will learn who I am again. Gill stayed in the old family house, the same walls that had once echoed with laughter. Now those walls reminded him of failure. The photos on the walls cut into him every time he passed. He spent long nights sitting in his study, staring at the empty chair across from him. Kelly _ S absence was louder than her silence had ever been. For the first time he admitted to himself what he had done, or rather, what he hadn't done. He had not listened. He had not cared the way she needed. He had not chosen her when it mattered. Now it was too late. The children bore the weight of it all. Some split their time between their parents, torn between love for both and the ache of division. The younger ones asked questions Kelly struggled to answer. The older ones carried anger. Anger at Gill for his neglect, anger at Kelly for finally letting go, anger at life for not being what it had promised to be. One night, Lawson confronted his father. His voice shook with pain. You always told us family was forever. You told us love could survive anything. Why didn't you fight for her? Gill couldn't answer. His lips trembled, but no words came. His silence was the only confession his son needed. Kelly, on the other hand, grew quieter but stronger. She filled her days with small routines, with moments of reflection, with her children when they visited. She began to discover a self she had long forgotten, a woman beyond the role of wife and mother. Yet the scars remained. At family gatherings, there was an invisible line drawn between Gill and Kelly. They spoke, politely, even kindly, but the distance could not be ignored. The children laughed and tried to keep the family spirit alive, but everyone knew something was gone forever. Years of unity had ended not with fire, not with betrayal, but with silence that slowly drowned love. And in the aftermath, both Gill and Kelly lived with the truth. Love left untended does not last.